we talking here when we're talking SBS, SAS? Is there a different mentality? Is it because we're Navy and these guys are, or you're Navy and these guys are Army? What are we talking here?
It's a really good question, Chris. First of all, when you ask me, I'm going to have to tell you the history. I'm going to have to go back a few years, and I can't talk for today, you know, what it's like today. I don't know many, no, I don't know any of the modern lads, but I knew a great deal about, so I can give you a slice of life in the 70s and 80s, what it was like. When I wrote my book, I got some criticism because I probably didn't get the tone correct by saying that there was a division, and I think people who thought that I said there was this huge barrier between us, or that we were battling each other, probably overread into it. First of all, yes, there was a wall between us both. There was this feeling of the SAS did look down on us in general, but that was a lot of the old and bold. But let's go back a little bit further. It's justified to a great deal. First of all, remember the SBS went into the doldrums for a long time, 20, 30 years, where they did nothing. Whereas the SAS continued to, and it's all up to the professionals of the commanders. Don't forget, the SAS and the SBS had to create a purpose for themselves. That's their commander's job. It's just like any company. It had to show it was worthwhile, otherwise it was going to be disbanded. So the SAS continued to give itself a value. And if you look at their activities all the way back to the Second World War, they hardly stopped working. The SAS found themselves employment. A lot of the wars were unmentionables and things they can't really talk about. The Omani Wars, unofficial, you know, for years. But the SAS were absolutely amazing. And all that time, the SBS did nothing. Really. I mean, when I first joined the SBS, I almost got onto the tail end of the Omani War, and it was finished by the time I joined up. But other than that, the SBS had done a couple of beach recce's down there, and that was it. So the SAS were really working very hard and doing a lot of operations, and the SBS were not. We got to be frank. Apart from some actions in Indonesia and things like that, the Indonesian War, where the SBS did fantastically, some of the old and bold there. That was my impression, that the SBS had let grip slip a bit on who they were and what their purpose was. And so the SAS got all the funding and they got all the good toys. And it wasn't until the brilliant Ram Seeger turned up, commander of the SBS in the early 70s, who looked at the North Sea and looked at everything and said, right, I'm going to put the SBS back on the map. I'm going to make them the greatest maritime special forces unit on the planet, which he did. But it takes a long time to do that. And we still had to go to the SAS for a lot of skills. They were, don't forget, the British Special Forces was pioneering nearly everything. Forget the Israelis. We were way above them, way beyond them. Yes, and they only had, their specific enemy to deal with, but we had a global issue, plus the Russians and other issues. So, but the SAS were pioneering things that no one was considering room entries at the level that the SAS was. Iranian embassy is a perfect example. And if you see that new film that just came out, I watched it the other day on the Iran, it's not bad. It's actually quite good. I mean, I worked with the team that did that job in Ireland. When I was doing that ambush I was telling you as a young lad and working, that was a team that went in and did that, and got some good mates who were on that operation. They were pioneering that stuff. When the Heckler and Koch system came in, which revolutionized room entries, I won't go into the technicalities of it, but basically allowed us to change from a pistol being the primary room entry weapon to an SMG becoming the primary. which gave us more stability, more accuracy, and more firepower. I had 30 rounds as opposed to 12 or 14. The SAS got all that gear first. We had to sit and wait for it to trickle down, and then they would come and show us how to use it. So we have that aspect first, where they were the mother unit, you know, and so it took us a long time to stand on our own 2 feet. And then what was left was there was a big residual of SAS lads, older guys, who always saw the SBS as very poor cousins. It took a whole new generation, the new SBS guys coming in, mixing with the brand new generation of SAS guys to actually start to change that. I went to do a 6 weeks communication course in 1976 in the Sterling Lines in Hereford, and first week was, you know, kind of muted. Here's a point: every morning, 6 o'clock, the SBS went out and did a 4 or 5 mile run. In my whole time in Sterling Lines, I saw about 3 SAS guys out running. Went down to the gym. There was all the SBS lads were in the gym, all the bootnecks. There was about 2 or 3 SAS. That's a different story. We did have a completely different ethos when it came to fitness. The SAS couldn't hold a penny to a candle to the SBS's fitness generally, although they had some fantastic runners, but they had individual efforts. They didn't have an ethos. The Marine ethos and the SBS ethos was the whole team had to get down and work out together. Going back to Sterling Lines, so after the first week, you know, got to know the young SAS lads, and then come Friday, we got there Sunday night. Come Friday evening, the first Friday, I said to the SAS lad I was teamed up with, who was just a couple of years older than me, so you're going to take us ashore, you know, show us a run. And he took me to one side. He said, I can't. I said, well, what do you mean I can't? He said, we've been told not to socialise with you lot. And that was it. So we went ashore, the SBS went ashore on their own, because the SAS were told not to, the youngsters on our course were told by the old and bold not to socialise with that lot. So that was the general attitude. But it was an old and bold thing. I'm sure today now with the combined selection courses, and we started to work more and more with Hereford, and I think we've matured through that now. And the SBS started to get funding, had some successes. Falklands was a great success for the SBS, and many other operations. I would expect today that if any SAS blokes holds a grudge against the SBS, it's got to be something from Victorian times. You know, I don't know where they get it from, and vice versa. That's my opinion today, and there's obviously a lot more detail behind that. But yes, there was, but the SAS was the mother unit, and it you know what I mean? It was something that we aspired to. Let's face it, the SBS had to use the SAS as a target. We want to be as great as those guys, you know, and I do believe we got there.
Yeah, it's interesting you say, Duncan, because I never knew there was any difference. And if I was honest, I always thought the SBS were kind of like the secret warriors, that they, you know, they had it all sus behind the scene. This won't make a lot of sense to people at home who haven't been in the forces, but the Royal Marines recruit a different type of person to the parachute regiment. And this is not in any way a judgment. It's things are different, and that's okay. Things are allowed to be different, right? And as such, you kind of get this soldier or Marine if I'm just talking blunt terms, it's almost like they could be a bit middle class, whereas the paras recruit from like the hardest sinker states in Britain, like people that, tough guys. They, by nature of their life, are naturally tough guys. And I kind of think you see that in the in subsequently the SBS and the SAS, which recruit, I don't know if I'm right in saying predominantly from paras. I know it's open to all regiments and even all, probably all forces, but yeah.
You know, here's a statistic. When I was in, 60% of all special forces came from the Royal Marines.
Mm.
But when you add them together, you've got to add the SAS, the SBS, and the 14 in. And of course, because the SBS in those days only recruited Marines. But actually, if you add them all together, they all 60%. That was an interesting statistic. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I think it's fascinating, but I wish I could encapture for our friends at home this, you know, it's like I've been on operations with the SAS, only we're talking Northern Ireland now. In fact, I was only involved in one patrol. I'm not trying to big myself up. I was, you know, my career is just what it was, but you know, I've got so much respect for those guys, not for any badge, but just because of who I met. They were such good guys. I mean, I could say the names. I won't say the names, obviously. And I know that our service brothers and sisters listening will know who I'm talking about. Just really good guys that just wanted to be the most professional soldiers they could be. But then another sort of aside is, fucking hell, they were animals in when things started going bang. They loved it. They were just like, you know.
Yeah.
I spoke to
Chris. I've thought about this for years, and here's my analogy, because I always love to go back into history if you want to find out what's him today. The difference between the paras and the Marines, SAS and SBS as well. And I go back to the genesis of the para. The para troop was designed as, he had to be an absolute maniac animal. Who the hell jumps out of a plane on the end of a piece of silk, lands in the field, supposed to be with all his mates, finds himself on his own and has to take on 100 Germans, all right? You've got to be bloody insane. So how do you design that kind of animal? And so the Brits went about designing this particular kind of animal. And so he had to have an individualism. He had to be absolutely crazy, but he also had to be able to operate by himself and not care about anybody. He had to leave wounded behind, because that's the para thing. That's their objective. Whereas the Marines evolved with a completely different type of ethos. It was a team concept. It was all working together. And if you look at the paras and the Marines in my days, that's where they were. The paras were very much individuals. Yes, they all worked together as a team, but they had an individual ethos, whereas the Marines had this team thing. And that evolved into the SAS, because I do think the para influence is greater in the SAS than any other unit.
Yeah. And
so you end up with an SAS with a lot of paras with a para mentality. And so they were in my day much more as individuals. They were much more independent, autonomous in the way that they operate and thought. Whereas the SBS again was designed as a team. Everything was team. It was a team hitting the beach. It was a team climbing all platforms. And it was only till we then branched out and got into 14 in and other jobs that, you know, I actually spent most of my career, a lot of my career, working alone or with just one or two people. So that was the general genesis, I think, of the two ethoses. They are different because of where we come from, paras and Marines. And I just love the fact that we have this difference. I love the fact that we've got these two core ethoses. And I'd say to anyone, if you want to join the military and you're thinking of the para of the Marines, that's where you start with. What's ethos? Am I a team player, or I am more of an individual that understands the team concept, but, you know, can stand alone, take that machine gun nest, which they bloody well did in the Falklands, you know. Only the Paras charging by themselves to wipe out machine gun nests. You'd think that was the stuff of Second World War, but no, those guys are around today, you know. It's the way they make them.